For those of you new to ITSM Academy, here's a quick overview. ITSM Academy is a full-service provider of IT service management education. We develop all content in-house. That includes all ITIL education as well as process design, agile, and DevOps. Since 2003, we have trained and certified tens of thousands of students. Now let me introduce today's speaker, Matt Hooper. Matt is a digital transformentalist, an author, a podcaster, blogger, and a Twitter addict by his own admission. He is an engaging international speaker on agile business management, leadership, technology, and customer service. His 20-plus year career has taken him from help desk analyst to CIO. Matt brings practical and real-world insights for growing and sustaining business outcomes through organizational agility and customer centricity. He's an active member of the ITSM, DevOps, and Agile communities, and you can follow him on Twitter. His Twitter handle is @VigilantGuy. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Karen. How are you?
I'm fine. Are you ready for me to make you the presenter?
I am.
All right. Perfect.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you, ITSM Academy, for inviting me on again. And thank you to ITSM Academy for being one of the probably premier ITIL training organization to let me come on with the title "Cut the ITIL Anchor" and raise the ITIL sail. So, boy, what a tough topic this has been over the past few years about ITIL. So, I want to just get into the conversation first off by stating this is not ITIL bashing. This is not about framework wars. This is not about soapboxing. I'm not going to be doing any grandstanding. I have been an ITIL trainer in the past. I have used its principles to advance my career and, frankly, grow my businesses that I've worked in multiple capacities. I believe strongly in many of the principles and guidance of ITIL. But the reality is that times are changing, and I think Axelos, the owners of ITIL, are seeing this change as well too. So I was just recently up on their website, and I love this, right? I love this whole focused on business outcomes and enabling business change. If you look across this definition, and this is the definition for ITIL, you don't see IT on here. Right? There's a particular reason why you don't see ITIL. ITIL has always had the best interest of IT professionals at heart, but it always had the best interest of the business at heart, or the organization in which IT was delivering value to. When you look at ITIL and how it's developed, it brought a level of awareness and credibility to the benefits of process and controls and communications and reporting that frankly was sorely lacking across the industry. IT professionals, especially when I started my career over 20 years ago, gosh, it's almost 25 years ago, is that we were very lackadaisical in the way that we communicated things in our projects, and we would make changes without telling anybody, and we kind of just did the things that we thought were right, and we almost held the business beholden to us. Of like that mentality, don't they know who I am? I'm the IT administrator. I can take your email down, or I can take your network down, or there was a lot of that attitude, and unfortunately that attitude still exists in some organizations today. It's true. And while I love the current messaging coming out of Axelos, there are just some things though that ITIL's guidance, when it came out in 2007 with version 3. It was good. It was changed. It was new. 2011 brought some, again, new, and the ITIL Practitioner Guide, still some new stuff. But they're still holding on to some of the old things as well too, and some of those things just frankly are going to affect your credibility. They're going to affect your ability to move within your organization to a higher level. They're going to affect your ability to respond to business demands. And so when we take a look at just this whole shift in mentality, we're seeing that businesses want to be more agile. Businesses have changed and morphed from what they used to be to what they are today. And we see all these types of businesses now, like Uber and Airbnb, the largest fleet company in the world, Uber, doesn't own a single car, completely an IT company. So when you look at that business model, you say to yourself, well, the business owns the risk, the business owns the requirement, the business owns the driving. IT is supposed to be a service provider to the business. Well, they're an IT company. They're an IT company that provides transportation services. Who's the business and who's IT? When you look at this Agile manifesto that I got from DevOps Institute, you see there's this value of individuality and interactions over process and tools, and working software over comprehensive documentation, right? The old adage, I'd rather have a wildly undocumented success than a overly documented failure, right? That old expression comes to mind. Customer collaboration as versus service level agreements and responding to change, being dynamic and a learning organization. And just switch that around, right? Switch that around from where our values in the conversation and the focus and the project plans and the initiatives and the communications from ITIL initiatives with inside of organizations. What are they structured as? How are they moving across the organization? So today's conversation, today's presentation is not going to be to bash ITIL. Okay? It's simply going to be to highlight that while there's great guidance, and we're going to point out some of the great guidance, we're going to talk about the good, there are things and tones that will affect the message in which you're using to deliver it. So when I say cut the ITIL anchor, what I'm talking about here is anchors are really important. For anybody of you who've been on a boat or do any kind of boating, anchors can save your life. In times of turmoil, in times of heavy winds and big waves and lots of thrashing about, that anchor is your safety line. That anchor is the thing that will keep you grounded through a very tumultuous situation. And now if you look at that, where did ITIL really get its growth in the marketplace? Well, it was right after 2000, right? So right after this whole situation where we had Y2K, year 2000 bug, in all of our software, and we didn't know which software packages were going to stay running and which ones were going to fail. We didn't know what those software packages did for our business. So almost every organization in the world that had a fairly large IT organization or IT department, no matter what industry you're in, particularly in manufacturing services and distribution services and financial services, embarked on this massive CMDB project. Go out and inventory every asset, go out and find out what their configuration is and find out what that asset does for our business. And it was somewhere around, I want to say between 2 p.m. and 2:30 on January 3rd, 2000, that CMDB was completely useless because it didn't have change management built into it. It didn't have release management built into it. It had no design strategy built into it. It had no transition processes in and around it. So this massive effort of inventorying assets and understanding their relationship to the business was now completely thrown out the window. Had we had better ITIL understanding back then, many organizations today would have a very robust, autonomous, artificial intelligence-based configuration management system. We would have progressed this industry significantly further. I think we all recognize that. Then came the dot-com boom, and people were just wildly throwing out software and building new things, but there really wasn't a control on how the software was developed. It was test the market, test the market, test the market. So it introduced this concept that we need to go out there and actually validate what the market can do, but we had just gone through this really controlled and internally focused initiative. And so ITIL got its support and its foundation inside of IT that, hey, listen, these are troubled waters here. We got software developers wanting to build things fast, but we don't even know what our infrastructure is able to deploy. We have vendors and suppliers who are going out of business. In 2002, 2003, there was a massive disruption in the market from an IT service management provider standpoint, right? So we don't know who the suppliers were. We don't know what support contracts we had. Great time for ITIL, right? Put that anchor down, get our controls in place. But if our anchor stays down, we don't go anywhere. Tides shift. things move past us. And what's happening now is that we're seeing this situation where if we're dedicated to the provisioning of services from an IT perspective, and our focus is to make them highly effective and highly efficient, then we're anchoring down. And that's not necessarily going to take us to where we need to go. So think of yourself as a service provider. If you are a service provider, then you have a set of customers and who you're interacting with. Who are those customers? Why do you do what you do for them? Now, most of us think, well, I'm IT, and my customers are the other departments in which I serve. Hopefully, by the end of this presentation, you'll rethink that perspective. You'll rethink who you are and what you do. See, because the world around us is being disruptive. Disruption is the rage now, right? And businesses are not funded because they're predictable. They're funded because they're disruptive. CEOs are not focused on digital strategies because of the controls that are in place or cost savings. CEOs are funding the digital strategies based on creating new customer experiences and growing the market. And you have other forces now who are direct competitors to you where you no longer have a captive market. As an IT service provider and having this internal customer, you lived in a monopoly for many years. The organization wasn't going to go out and get IT services from someplace else. You were it. You may have gotten fired. They may have replaced you from a management perspective, but they stayed internal. That world doesn't exist anymore, does it? Bring your own device. Start it in the desktop space. Desktop services, no longer required by IT. Cloud infrastructure. What IT calls shadow IT, but every other part of the organization just calls getting work done. It's called business IT. They go out and they get network, they get storage, they get servers, computing, application services. They buy cloud services. They buy IT functionality, not from you. This is a disruption to us. This is a disruption to our focus. And so we have to rethink kind of what are we focused here. We're being pressured to be innovative, and at the same time we're being focused on being more secure, more resilient, more highly reliable, more trustworthy. Now, in the IT service management space, we may have focused on, hey, listen, if we can provide better services internally, that creates our competitive advantage. Well, Clayton Christensen, a Harvard professor from Harvard, obviously, professor from Harvard, he was the author of Innovator's Dilemma. And he said that the key to growth is not developing new technologies and products. But what it is, it's understanding disruptive forces and creating new business models and opportunities. So just pick on Amazon for a second. You may remember Amazon used to be a bookstore. They were an online bookstore. Not that exciting, not that big of a deal. Did they create a great online bookstore? Yeah, they did. They made it really easy to find books. Then they bought companies that made it really easy to download books and listen to books. But what did they create? They created a new business model, didn't they? Where that suppliers, book providers, could come in and get their books listed through easy self-service tools. There was no longer a huge set of complexity for these consumer-to-business or business-to-business relationships for a marketplace. Then they capitalized on this marketplace to then offer other products. And in their growth of offering other products, they realized that they could offer all types of capabilities in excess capacity that they had within their IT infrastructure. And now Amazon sits as one of the largest cloud providers in the world. Started as a bookstore, but they capitalized on disruptive market forces. So I ask you, is Amazon a bookstore that has an IT department, or are they an IT company? Who is IT anyways? Who is IT? What is IT? The service provider must therefore determine who the customer is in each situation. This is a direct quote from the ITIL Practitioner Guide. So much value in the ITIL practitioner guide, but this undertone is demeaning. And I'm not trying to beat up the authors. Many of them are friends and very intelligent people. And there's a lot of value to the book. You should own it. You should read it. But this undertone you must reject. See, because while we see the world this way in IT, right, where there's this customer, and then there's a whole bunch of people who service that customer, and then for some reason they become our customers, is an incorrect view of the world. This disruption has happened in such a way that as IT providers and enablers of information and technology to the business, that we are underpinning all of the enterprise, but not in a way that they are our customer. They are our business partner. If we think for some reason that sales knows how to leverage technology to go drive customer value, we're demeaning ourselves. If we think that finance knows how to leverage technology to drive customer value, we're selling ourselves short, right? Because the reality is that this is how the business sees IT, because IT is the business. We exist across all functions of the organization. When the organization looks at technology such as mobile applications, database, survey systems, logistical systems, all these types of assets, they look at this and say, how do we drive real value for the customer? If we're not part of that direct conversation with the true end customer, then we are just being a provider. We are just being a cog in a wheel instead of being the driver of the car. And we won't be part of the digital strategy. And we are separating ourselves from the organization's mission and critical value to the point that we could be outsourced, we could be replaced, and maybe we should be. Now the reality is that we have incredible skills. We have skills that go across the organization to providing enterprise service management, understanding high availability, security across the organization. We have incredible skills that we've developed from being experts in this space to the point that we truly recognize this one simple fact, that IT is not a department, IT is a competency. And as IT service management professionals, we are in the best seat with our training, with our skills, with our experiences to help drive that competency to maximum value for the organization. With an ever-growing technical workforce, IT is going to be less and less control of either information or technology. But because of that, when the marketing team gets a new budget to go out and acquire a new CRM solution or a new marketing campaign solution, if we're not involved to help understand the contracts, where are you pulling the data from? Who's publishing that marketing automation tool with our sensitive customer information? How is it secured? How do we get this back if that vendor goes away? Who's protecting themselves in this situation? They don't think about scalability, durable systems, secure and highly available platforms. It's not in their DNA, nor should they. Right? That's our responsibility. We can help them there. Right? So we have to be enablers for the business. Because the reality is, again, that we're in a digital economy where IT is the business. And when IT is the business, things change significantly. Right? It's strategy, not technology, that drives digital transformation. So think about what you're providing to your organization. If you're just providing services, again, you're selling yourself short. We literally have to reimagine the business models that we're operating under. And we have to foster a culture that is going to do a business enablement at greater agility. So under this, there's an underlying tone here, right? That in this new economy and in this new world, that while we did a good job getting our arms around technology and systems in the 80s and the 90s, the 2000s were great to teach us about services. How do we build a business of IT? But this business of IT of providing services has to change. The concept of focusing on value streams based on business requirements is a fallacy. Why? Because the business doesn't know what the requirement is. IT is the business. the business is IT, and because it's a new era and people actually haven't gotten this service before, they don't know what it is. They need to learn. What we have to focus on is creating an experience that lets them test the service. Will it work? Does it operate for the business? How do we then provide feedback and get them to the next level and really drive the service to the next level? And these can't be networking and email and these things that we used to call services. Those are irrelevant factors now. It has to be about order entry, right? The shopping experience, the order to cash experience, the account lookup experience, things that our customers are truly interfacing with. The warehousing and inventory experience as shown here in the picture. Right? Think about virtual reality and artificial intelligence and Internet of Things and how they're creating and interfacing into this new experience. That's what we need to be focused on from an IT service management perspective. And the reason is because the things that we've been doing in the past and defining our IT catalog and our IT set of services and trying to justify these things, those things have become commoditized. Network infrastructure, data center, storage, compute, application services, databases, reporting and analytics. These are commoditized services. You can buy these with a credit card. Back in 2003, Nicholas Carr, who was another professor from Harvard, he wrote in the Harvard Review that IT doesn't matter. And he said specifically because when a resource becomes really essential to the competitive nature of the business, but inconsequential to the strategy, like electricity, like plumbing, like logistics, it actually creates more of a risk for that organization to own it. And in the article, he went on to talk about railway systems and electricity and grid-type systems that companies used to own their own electrical plants. They used to own their own electrical plants and produce their own power. But as advancements in electricity, in the grid, and power storage and power regeneration started to advance, they couldn't keep up with that. It became ubiquitous and it became so inefficient that they just wanted to tap into the grid. They wanted to take their resource, apply it back into the grid, and just get it as a service. And that's exactly what's happening in IT. That was in 2003 he wrote that. Again, 2003, Amazon was a bookstore. They're now the largest provider of commoditized-based IT services. Everything I mentioned, network storage, firewall, security, applications, database, you can buy with a credit card from Amazon. So if we don't cut the anchors on the things that we're holding on to, we're going to be left behind. And this is critical to our personal development. It's critical to our strategy. It's critical to the value that we create for the business. And in some organizations where IT all of a sudden found themselves displaced, I feel bad. It's painful. But that doesn't have to happen. We have to keep our head up. We have to look beyond where we are today and where things are going. So let's talk about the ITIL anchors versus the characteristics of agile ITSM organizations, organizations that have found ways to take some of the principles and guidance of ITIL and make it a little bit more responsive, make it a little bit more forward-thinking. And we're going to bullet list these kind of across the top here. So let's get to the first one that really irks me. This is one that really, really bugs me, and I encourage you desperately to rethink your language here. If you want to be a service provider, then you should work for a service provider. If you love racking and stacking servers in the data center, if you love deploying network switches, if you love getting tasked to extend databases, then a managed service provider is probably a great destination for you because it will ultimately be your destination. Getting out of the IT business in a lot of ways is almost every CEO's objective. But they want to capitalize on IT in the right way. Now, if you love the organization you work for, you love the industry you're working for, hospitality, supply chain manufacturing, retail, finance, then you have to rethink who your customer is. Back in 2007, I sat at a Network World conference, and the CTO of CVS was in the room, and the CTO of Harvard was in the room. And they're both talking about their customer. And I tell you, they couldn't be talking more about the different people. The CTO of Harvard was talking very specifically about the customer being the student, but almost always talked about the customer being internal departments. Very rarely they even talk about the student, which frankly isn't really their customer. As with the person who has a couple kids in college, it's me. I'm the customer, right? Or the professors, they're really the customer in a lot of ways, right? Because they're providing the value to the organization. But the internal departments are not their customer. Now, the CTO of CVS talked about the customer. I knew exactly who he was talking about. The person walking in to one of the stores to get their prescription filled. It was crystal clear to me. In every conversation from there out that CTO talked about, I could clearly see that their strategy, their mission, their objective was to focus on making it an easier and better experience. And this was over 10 years ago. CVS has had massive success and growth. You can see why, right? That strategy, led by IT. A customer in ITIL is anyone not in IT. Agile organizations, the company has one customer. We're all partners to service that customer, and they don't work here. Let's talk about functional groups and roles. A lot of time is put into putting these functional groups and roles together. Now, ITIL is not prescriptive here, but its guidance does suggest a lot of things that there should be these roles, or these people should have these titles. And you'll go into organizations and find a problem manager as a title. How can a problem manager be a title? And that's a functional expertise. It's a capability, right? Not a department. And we need problem management skills embedded into each of our functional areas, including the business, because solving a problem doesn't always happen technically. So we have to reshift these groups, these siloed roles, right? Because it's not IT in the business. It's not about IT and business alignment. IT is the business, and it's about business strategy and execution from a digital-first perspective. So therefore, we need to rethink some of the ways we even approach our projects. Now, one of my heroes is Kim Stevenson, the former CIO of Intel. In 2013, I had the privilege to go out to California and do a video interview with her, where she talked about the performance of her IT organization. She never talked about IT performance. She talked about business performance. And one of the things she said that drove that focus, she canceled every IT project. She canceled every IT project, and she made it a business project. And she made those owners resell it back to her as a business project. I love that. That's a characteristic that's seen continually across these high-performing organizations, where they're focused on business projects and business initiatives, where they're working closely together because they recognize that IT enables the digital strategy of the organization. They are the enabler. They're the ones who are executing on a digital-first strategy, and they're not just simply a service provider. They're not trying to check a box that says, I resolved this issue within 4 hours, thus I met my SLA, thus I'm doing a good job. They have set their identity. They consider themselves a partner. And partner language is very, very important. When you use partner language versus service provider language, it changes the game. You know, I think I've used this analogy before with a webinar on ITSM Academy. I've certainly gave it in many of my speeches kind of around the world. But I think it really drives the point home. Say, for instance, that you used service provider language with your partner. Try it. Go someplace like to Pink Elephant in Vegas, or HDI in DC this year, or Fusion next, in the fall. Go to one of these events. Come home, right? Come home from the next big DevOps conference. Come home to your partner and use service provider language. Say to them, hey, honey, had a great trip. While I was gone, I was 99.9% faithful to you. Did I do a great job? You're going to get a reaction, and trust me, you're going to be talking about contingency planning, not about relationship building, right? That is not a partner conversation. That's a service provider conversation. But think how you report to your business and how you communicate with your business. Think about these terms, these anchors that you have. How do you cut them, right? How do you cut them and change the way that you identify yourself and identify who you work with. Now let's go to process or tools. Right? We get a lot of bashing on tools sometimes. I just saw a post yesterday on Facebook. Someone said, you know, the tool is really the easy part. You know what? The tool's not the easy part. Tools are different across the landscape, and they do make a difference. But the biggest thing is your commitment to that tool. When you stand up and say, let's spend money on this tool, let's embrace this technology, let's find ways to embed our internal processes into this tool, you're making a commitment and it makes a change. But one of the biggest challenges that we see is that a lot of the guidance that we have from ITIL, we have to translate it, right? We have to stop and think about, okay, I understand what the author was saying because they lived in a world that was very focused on human processes. We didn't have technology like we did today. We didn't have artificial intelligence, big data, IoT sensory devices, autonomic computing, algorithmic computing that can help us change the fluidity of our work. We didn't have the ability to snapshot an environment, roll it back, do a test, or roll it forward. Right? So our risk levels were higher. Our change and release processes were more difficult. We don't live in that world anymore. So I'd rather take a fool with a tool than a fool with a pen. I'd rather spend the next 6 months trialing and erroring technology to provide my scalability and increase my performance than sitting with a consultant trying to overly document processes that people aren't actually going to adopt. Right? Now, I came from the consulting world, many friends in the consulting space. I'm not bashing consultants here. I'm just saying even they have recognized their business model has changed. So let's take change advisory boards for a second. To no end does it confuse me how so many change advisory boards will still sit and look at a backlog of changes, only get through the top 20, and then ignore all the rest. In that 2 or 3 hour meeting, they can't even really get into the true risk of those top 20. The business is at risk because they're not getting the functionality that those changes would provide them, either securing security breaches, increasing capacity availability, deploying new functionality for their business. What are they truly doing from a risk perspective? Do they know what the real risks are? They usually don't, right? That at a much lower level has already been kind of evaluated. Why didn't they put that into a solution? Why aren't they embedding that into a product, into a tool where that risk can be automated? And why aren't we looking and saying, hey, you know what? This really isn't that high level of risk based on all these factors. Let's go faster. Let's get it out there. Let's not hold back. And do we have to really wait till Saturday at 2 o'clock? We're in a highly available environment. Can we do 5 of the 10 web servers with this change, make sure it all works, and then do the other 5 the next day? Can we rethink the way that we manage risk? And how do we fulfill these requests? Right? Are we filling out forms still? When a service says it's out of capacity because of its monitoring tool, do you really need someone to take that event and fill out a form and make a change request to increase its capacity when it's a software-defined infrastructure, when the storage is completely virtual, when it's really just a simple little script to extend the storage and the physical capacity has it to manage it? Request automation is here. It needs to happen now. And how about asset tracking? Do we really want to provide a self-service form for somebody to fill out that another person then takes and goes into an order entry process? Where's supplier automation? Agile organizations have this. Agile organizations understand that their suppliers and their vendors are set up with B2B connectors so they can automatically order the things that they want. It gets shipped and received, and it automatically updates their service management platform with the status and tracking in that request. We're getting rid of some of these manual processes. When you look at them and you look at the structure of them, they just don't work. You have to cut those anchors. And we have to embrace technology more. We have to embrace it, particularly around our release cycles. The whole concept that we have to release to one environment and then we go back and we release to another, and the role of project management, we have to rethink this. Because the reality is that high-performing organizations focus on production, and they roll production back to make changes, and then they validate. And it reduces the complexity in their code base. It reduces the complexity around the configuration. Configuration is automated. Scripts are automated. And real-time monitoring is telling them 90% of whether this functionally worked or didn't. Automated testing, capacity and performance analysis, security and penetration testing are all done in real time. So if our release and our deployment strategies are based around some kind of very overtly complex change process, we're just not going to win. Our anchors we have 4 or 5 anchors in the water, right? Instead of raising our sail, which the business wants us to move faster. We don't have to be irresponsible. I'm not saying be irresponsible in the way we release things, but we have to think about leveraging the capabilities that we have in 2017. So when it comes to basically decision support, which all ITSM really is just decision support, we have to go back to the simple fact is, do we want discussion or do we want data to tell us? When you look at many of the guidance that's in ITIL, it served its purpose at the time, but we're not there yet. It doesn't mean that the evaluation was wrong. I'm not saying that the risks and concerns and considerations were wrong in any way whatsoever. I'm just saying that if you have resources assigned to a project, they're finite. And if resource allocation says that they can only do 8 hours a day and they're doing 16 or 14 hours a day based on your project data, you don't need to have a team discussion about priority. You don't need to have a team discussion about working more efficiently. You need to use this data to reduce your risk that you're overtaxing, overburdening resources, right? Especially around change management. You know, our goal with a change advisory board should be to advise. And even Kaimar Caruso says this all the time, right, from Axelos. Advise, not approve. Advise. Did you think through the risks? Are you doing the right things on major projects? But everything else should be looked at, could this be and should this be a standard change? Right? And use monitoring to tell you if the quality is there. If you have a development team that does 300 releases a week and no incidents are generated from them, then you should be looking to make those guys go faster, right? Enable that team to do more. Then if you do have teams that are going too fast and are introducing fragility in the infrastructure, then slow them down, then get involved, right? But you don't have to have meetings and involve everybody in the meetings or have representative in these meetings to improve the quality. That's not going to work. That's slowing you down, and it's not even effective, right? It's just checking the box. And we want to use feedback to determine success. And so by isolating things into smaller releases, we can immediately get feedback. We know, did we do the right thing? If you do a series of changes throughout the month, and at the end of the month you're producing an incident report based on failed changes, that is really hard to go back and make improvements on. And it's taken way too long. So think about how you're getting that feedback. How are we communicating the platform for feedback? How are we enabling people to have the discussion? Now, one of the things is that you see in again, the practitioner book, it says, you know, direct observation. You know, you need to go out there and work. Don't focus so much on report. You know, I disagree with the statement that data is not a substitute for direct observation. Okay, I think data can tell us a lot. I don't need to survey you about using my self-service with an email survey. I real-time can use chat and say, get on the self-service with you and say, hey, you find everything you look for, is this a good experience for you? I can use Google Analytics and see how many times you bounce off pages and how much you click through things. Right? Now, in the practitioner book, it says extrapolated data can lie. Right? And on page 22.6, it says extrapolated data can lie. This is very true, right? And so this is why we need to break our releases into smaller release cycles. That's why we need to break our changes down into smaller changes and more frequent changes, because then it's not compound data. It's more direct. And this helps us to do a very, very true point that is in practitioner. Do not just measure, analyze, right? So it's not just about reporting, it's what are we going to do with that reporting? What are we going to do to drive actions out of that reporting? So if you're still using Excel for audits, if you're still using some antiquated reporting system, that's a failure. If your activities are being done and measured in ITSM, then they should be audited from ITSM Solution and Suite, right? If we're tracking a change, if we're tracking release cycles, then ITSM Suite should automatically track that. We should be able to do our auditing off of that. That's going faster. That's reducing the data calls. That's reducing a ton of rework later, right? So if you haven't seen the white paper from Gene Kim on using DevOps to handle audit, definitely check that out. Provides great guidance on how you can build in some capabilities within your ITSM Suite to do change and release logging, right? Stop thinking everything needs to be in approval and controlled. Control is a myth. Right? What we want to do is focus on improvement. Now let's get to something that's really important here. We have this traditional ITSM view of the business need, right? And what we want to do is challenge you on requirement versus experiment. So look at traditional ITSM, highly structured relationship management, right? Based on defined agreements, highly defined through critical success factors and KPIs, elicited through surveys and meetings. But will they meet the business requirements? It is a myth to think that there's an elusive, perfectly stated business requirement out there that IT can build to, that IT can deploy to. They don't know. Netflix's business requirement versus Blockbuster's business requirement in 2002 was almost the same. Blockbuster's out of business now. Netflix is worth $42 billion. Do you think Netflix knew that this was going to be their business requirement today, providing streaming video and getting into the actual video, movie production business? No. No. They stayed experimental. They tried new things. They shipped DVDs instead of you having to go to the store. They allowed you to view movies through a streaming service. Then they used search engines to promote different things that you might like, and used heuristics to understand what your interests were and show you things that you might want to watch, right? Their organization was very unstructured and collaborative. It was based on targets. We want more viewers. What does it take for us to get there? We don't know. Let's test and try. And they measured through analytics and real-time quality scoring. Right? This is the change in mindset of experimenting versus requirements. And so if our anchors are down and we're just so, everything's black and white, we're really going to struggle to be a partner to the business and a business strategy. Right? We have to rethink this. Because ultimately what our goal is to test and learn. Business requirement is a myth. It's just a hypothesis. Some truth, some not. And it's our goal and objective to find out as fast as possible what is truth and what is reality. So let's compare and contrast this to kind of our traditional thinking. If we look at the landscape of our traditional thinking, you know, we have to have this strategy, and then we have to have these enablements for how we're going to design things and bring things into place, and then there needs to be a transition organization that will help us get it to the next level, and then we'll support it and operate it, right? So we implement what I call the waterfall methodology, right? Where we start to build all these different functional roles and responsibilities and focus areas to help us satisfy these needs, these very structured components within our business. And then what do? We then tool it, right? We tool it to answer certain questions. So we look at, well, what's our need and what's broken and who's changing things and how do we fix things and how are we going to manage all of this, and then we put technology in place to satisfy this. Very frequently this technology is siloed. This technology doesn't work holistically across each other. There are owners of these technologies who are unwilling to collaborate and work together. Data is not shared. Communications are not shared. We see infighting constantly happening with inside of organizations. From what the requirement was to how we supported it and fixed it when it didn't work is such a huge gap for most of our initiatives, for most of our projects, for most of our deployments, and most of our service delivery, that we lose the ability to learn. We lose the ability to watch closely and be responsive. So you know which process we spend the most time on? It's one, unfortunately, ITIL has not provided any guidance on. But I tell you, it's a big one. I call it the pray process. We pray someone got the requirement right. We pray the developers built it right and someone tested it. We pray the person who released it didn't do this manually and make what they call a fat finger typo, right? We pray someone documented how they fixed it and resolved an issue so next time it happens we can fix it again. We pray and we pray and we pray. Not a great strategy. Let's rethink this. Smaller teams, highly collaborative, focused on technology that is integrated, sharing of communication, and rethinking a service model that's focused on the true end customer and how the business operates. When we do that, we're able to clearly see the business opportunities. We know that we're not going to satisfy all those opportunities correctly. We know we're going to fail. We know we're not going to get it all right. We don't want to just do what our competition's doing. We want to try something different. So we build a business hypothesis. Work collaboratively to build and test that capability into a minimal viable feature or a minimal viable product or a minimally invasive new release. And we document that and we test it. We released it in such a way that we can find out, does the market even want this? I'll tell you, one of the things that is awesome is the way that Uber approaches this market space. For some of you, you may have already seen this. It's called Uber Eats. Totally new service offering from Uber. They used excess capacity in drivers to take people around. Well, why not use those excess capacity in drivers to pick up lunch? They didn't release it to everybody who uses Uber. They only released it to those who are very active Uber subscribers. They only released it in certain cities. And they're trialing the market. They have a business hypothesis. People would like their lunch delivered. These people are just sitting around waiting for the next Uber ride. They'd be happy to take their car someplace and go get lunch and make a few extra bucks. $3 or $4 extra an hour helps these folks. Let's test it. They test it. They monitor it closely. They watch it, right? And then they validate it. And once it gets validated, then they'll make it enterprise. Then they'll make it highly durable. Then they'll worry about it getting it to the next level, right? And then they'll operationalize it. But they're focused on these true business services. So you can see here the teams consolidating, the systems consolidating, and the mindset on the work that we do, the way that we do it, focusing on building just enough, just right, keeps us lean, keeps us focused. And I think this is an imperative model for us to keep in the picture of our mind, that this is the new way for high-performing IT. Now, with that said, do you not see ITIL all over this? Of course it is. We need requirements, we need release, we need incidents to be resolved. Right? We need to answer these questions, but it's in our practice of it, right? This is raising the ITIL sail. This is cutting the anchors that are slowing us down, rethinking the position that we're in as an IT organization and how we can go faster. And what this does is this sets for us a really strong focus. For those of you who have read the Practitioner Guide, you may have loved Chapter 6. I do. I love it. It's my favorite part of the book. Because it's all about the organizational change management. And it's about changing an organization to be a digital-first organization. When you read it that way, when you say to yourself, I'm not an IT service management professional, I'm a digital transformation professional, and I'm in the driver's seat to help digital transformation, you read Chapter 6, and I tell you, it's a wonderful opportunity for you to focus on changing the culture. Because now what you see is not just the service management activities that you're involved with, service operation, change release, configuration. You're not focused on project management, enterprise architecture. You're seeing that, hey, it's a concept that we have innovation and the ability to operationalize it together. And that this fast and fluid innovation needs to have ideation and automation and validation to test the market, test our hypotheses and validate it. And then we've got this robust, trustworthy set of capabilities which we then operational and sustain that innovation. So it's innovation sustainment, not service management, that we're focused on. Because the reality is, and it goes right back to this quote, regardless of how much thought has gone into an improvement and initiative, some people are likely to be wary of change. I think the author was being kind. Some people will outright be resistant to change. And we need to push beyond that. So what does this mean for us? It means rethinking, what kind of boat are we in? Where are we navigating towards? Because if we're still hunkering down on our anchors, thinking that's going to help us be a better IT organization, then we're missing the opportunity here. Because raising these sails and talking about high availability and strategy and automated release cycles and new dynamic change processes and the better way to handle our configuration management system through federated automation and risk analysis through artificial intelligence and using new things like IoT to determine feedback loops, this is a world of opportunity, and it's a lot of fun for us right now, where it gets us on the cutting edge and it uses the exact disciplines that we had. Understanding tides, understanding currents, understanding winds. We are still doing the things that we've invested in our skills and our professionalism, but to take it to a whole next level. So rethink who you are, right? Rethink your identity. Get involved in what tools could do for you. Understand what containers and automated and continuous delivery could do for you. And push back on meetings where they are not coming with data first. If it's discussion over data, excuse yourself from that meeting and get back to something productive. And shift the focus on trying to be rigid and controlling what the business requirement is to becoming a learning organization. Failure is going to happen. You're going to get it wrong. What are your mechanisms to learn from that and improve? That's the key focus. Thank you for joining me on how to cut the ITIL anchor and raise the ITIL sail. Karen, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. We have questions, comments, and all kinds of things going on back here, Matt. That was fabulous. I mean, my goodness, all the information that you gave us on that. And you know, it is changing when you think about 2002 versus 2017. I mean, it's like daily things are changing.
Absolutely. And it doesn't mean that what we were doing then was wrong. It's just we have to do things different.
Yes, yes. Thank you. So before we get on to that, there's a couple of things I need to take care of. For those of you that are going to be dropping off for lunchtime, I'd just like to remind you that our next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, March 23rd, when Jane Grohl, CEO of the DevOps Institute and co-founder of ITSM Academy, joins us. And Jane's presentation is titled The Continuous People Pipeline. And Jane says, since DevOps focuses on continuous everything, shouldn't we also be focusing on continuous everyone? This session will explore ways to keep people engaged, communicating, and collaborating across the deployment pipeline. Jane will provide insight on the value, creation, and support of the continuous people pipeline. It will help attendees understand some of the human dynamics of change that must be considered, such as cultural debt, adoption models, acceptance curves, collaboration, immersion, and conflict management. At the end of this session, leaders will take away some innovative, strategic, and tactical ideas for overcoming silo constraints and creating a collaborative culture that excites, engages, and unifies people toward common business goals. So we hope that you can join us for that. And also, we do continue to bring you the practitioner presentations discussing agile and IT service management, challenges that people have, experiences that they have, successes, and everybody learns from that and appreciates doing that. And if anybody of our listeners there today would like to do that, just get in touch with me and let me know that, and I would be happy to help you do that. And I do believe that my colleague, Eric Montijo, is here today to share some information. Hello, Eric.
Hey. Hi, Karen. Thanks for introducing me. Hey, everybody. My name is Eric Montijo, and I am here to just say a couple words. Thanks, Matt, first off, for presenting an awesome webinar. I can see the chat lighting up right now, and I'm really excited about it. Specifically, I wanted to go over, you spoke about a concept called minimal viable. And I kind of wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that and how that relates to us. So whether you're on the first step into making your processes more agile or you're already in full swing, we at ITSM Academy have been helping people and organizations implement just enough controls into their methods. We'd love it if everyone here registered for our next workshop, which is actually Minimum Viable ITSM, to learn a little more in depth about the principles and best practice that Matt has outlined in his presentation. As a thank you for joining our webinar today, you can use coupon code FEBWEB2017 to receive the workshop free at the checkout. And I'll put that information in the chat, and I'm sure Karen is also going to send that information out to all of our attendees.
I will in our follow-up letter.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Eric. That's very generous. Thank you. Appreciate that. And we do have some comments. Let me do the comments before the questions for you, Matt. Judy is saying, wow, what a great presentation. She wants you to submit it to Fusion 17. And she said she's going to be looking for it. So there you have it. And thank you, Judy. And Kumar said, great educative presentation. And he says, thank you very much for that. Appreciates that. So you have a lot of kudos in here today. Thank you, Matt. Lots of exclamations, lots of things in there. Michael is asking, he put a question here and said, can we provide him with the reference materials and the books that you were referring to? And what we'll do, Matt, is when we give you the Q&A to review, we'll add the books in there. So we'll leave a question in there for you, and you can, one was the ITIL Practitioner Guide, Gene Kim's book. So there's some things that, and you can fill those in for them, and we'll provide it that way to those people. So thank you for that, Michael. And Claudia is asking, her big challenge right now is her management's directive to reshape their IT service management program to change the focus from, and I'm going to air quote here, stopping to implement ITIL and focusing on what our customers value the most. Any suggestions on how to do that?
Yeah. It's funny. I think this is the current message from Axelos as well too, right? ITIL is not something that you implement. What you implement is customer value. Find the lessons learned that are in ITIL and apply them to that perspective. And it's funny because when I listen to Kai Makaru, and I think he gets obviously a little agitated at me. Sometimes I'm a little tough on ITIL, but I think we're philosophically aligned that it is about driving customer value, right? So there was a webinar that was just done this week. It was Kai Mar and Robert Stroud and a few other people. And Robert, who's a Forrester analyst, said a CIO went through the organization and said, we're not doing ITIL anymore. If you've got ITIL on your resume, you're looking for a job someplace else, right? This isn't what we're doing. And, that's just kind of foolish to me. It's a little bit immature. It has nothing to do with that term ITIL or whatever. Again, the best practices, the practices that were put in place from the outset was to help you solve things faster, make changes with less risk and impact, and be more collaborative as an organization. Right? And those foundational principles haven't gone away. They need some changing, like I've highlighted in my presentation today. But for the most part, those are the things you need to focus on. So if you don't use the term ITIL, that's fine, but it doesn't certainly mean that there isn't great guidance there for you to do it. So I would suggest is push back on anybody who says, well, let's not do ITIL, let's focus on customer value. Ask them first off, well, just want to make sure, who's the customer? Because I'm focused with my guidance from ITIL and other things on who we serve as a business and working with my business partners to go make value a reality. So let's make sure we're on the same page, right? And bring clarity around what the mission is. Why do you think we're not providing customer value, and who's the customer? Because if you're just saying to me that you want IT to just react to a marketing person who says, I want it changed today, don't give me your change advisory board BS, that's not value either. Because on risk-based changes that are not fully fleshed out and just done because someone says demands to do it, it's irresponsible. And you're not going to be an irresponsible professional, right? So the practices don't necessarily need to go away. How you approach them, how you talk about them, may need to change. Get back and focus on the real customer and what value means to that customer. Right?
Thank you, Matt. Rick has a question. I don't know if we need more information on this or not. He's saying, Matt, what is the reference to the ITIL practitioner guide, please?
The reference on the practitioner guide?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I put in where I had slides, the sections, and then we can put a little post note afterwards out to everybody on what sections of the practitioner guide they're on. I'll even put page number on it for you.
Oh, great, thank you. Okay, we'll include that in the P&A for you, Rick, and anybody else who wants that reference as well. David also concurs with Judy that you definitely should submit your presentation. Just saying. And Leona is saying, thank you for delivering this information in a way that I understood and can see how business strategies are changing and how it relates to my business. So she's appreciative of that. And Leona is asking when the recording will be available, and it'll be posted to our website by tomorrow, Leona. Okay. Rick has a question. What are your thoughts about the huge gap between full sale operation and certification? BSI seems to be falling further and further behind.
So I'm not familiar with BSI, so this might be a better, if it's about certification and ITIL training, that might be something better for your team, Karen.
Okay, Rick, can you chat some more information about that into us? And we'll help you with that. And Leanne is saying, no one would debate what you have presented. I think the real world problem we face is that DevOps teams makes Lean and DevOps declarations and wants to stop performing ITIL people processes before we implement automated processes. Can you advise on how best to manage this transformation?
Yeah, it is a challenge, and I think it's because when you're in a DevOps team or you work with a DevOps team, and you see their approach to, say, branching a code set or pushing an update set to a particular environment. This whole concept of like, okay, well, what's this risk factor stuff? Why do I need to do it? I can just, if there's a problem, I can just roll it back. And that's what that whole slide on, the fool with the tool versus the fool with a pen. This is where you have to be a consultant and you have to be a coach. You have to explain to them, listen, this is great, the automation that you're putting in place. It really is alleviating a lot of the burden that we used to do around trying to document this stuff. And we're so glad that you're focused on, improving the business outcomes for us with some of the things you're doing. However, you may go away. We may get audited. There may be some level of accountability that someone else asked the question for, and I don't want to burden your team on having to come back and go through all the stuff that you didn't document and try to figure it out from your head. So here's some creative ways in which we can solve that. And this is where you just need to be a little bit more open to the new concepts. I don't want you to ask for approval for that change or that release, but I do want you in your code to be declarative. I want you to state in your code what you're changing and why you're changing it. I want you to give me, you can make up the hashtag yourself, but I want it exported to this particular file, right? And then work with your IT service management team tool to pick up that file and open up a change record, right? Work with them. Take a technology approach to it, but remind them that you're both trying to solve the business value. That work has to be done intentfully. That change has to be recorded. Because if a change happens and it wasn't by that person, well, we could have a security breach. Are you willing to sign off on that? If a change did cause a major outage and you didn't risk-base it, are you willing to sign off on that? If you get audited and you can't check all the boxes and we're not able to bring our drug to street, or we lose our financial compliance regulation, or we're not able to, maintain a clinic because we lose HIPAA, are you willing to sign off on that? This is where we have to be a coach and an enabler and just remind them that it's all wonderful that we're willing to do these things from an automated perspective, but that automation has to go to the level of governance, risk, and compliance as well too. And I'd love to hear how you make out with that or chat more about that. That's a great problem for us to be solving right now in the 2017 ITSM world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Mark has a question for you. He says, I agree with your comment about organizational infighting/politics and the difficulties this brings to the workplace and projects. How can this group suddenly become collaborative?
Yeah, this is a challenge. And what you're seeing is you're seeing lots of tools come into the marketplace like Yacker, like Slack, like Trello, where people are trying to work more collaboratively on what's in flight. The speed of getting work done and getting feedback is a challenge. So this is where that term agile couldn't be more polar opposite use cases, right? Though there are those in the industry who say, well, agile is just we got to get it done, we got to just figure it out, we got to and they're not thinking about intent. Then there's others who say, for us to be truly agile, we need to know how we're going to execute and how we're going to find out if we're not executing properly. Where communications, notifications, creating central platforms for discussions becomes a critical part of their operation. Where they look at email and Excel as their biggest nemesis, and they want open and constant communication. And they either create that physically through open workspaces where they get out of their cubes and they get out of their desks and they go to open spaces. So I'm seeing that a lot more. Or if their virtual presence allows it, they'll have second screens. And we do this at Avanti, because we try to be fairly agile in the way that we approach our business development and product development. Avanti sent me a dedicated Google box, and I've got a flat screen television, and it's kind of a constant presence. So people can, literally within seconds walk up to me and do a video conversation and things like that. Only warning here is this, is what happens sometimes is they go back into discussions versus data. So the open environment is great, the collaborative workspaces are great, but if people aren't measuring themselves, if they're being the irresponsible agile, then they messed up and they don't have the data to prove it, and now they're coming to have a discussion. And that's disruptive to you. That's disruptive to the other people in the organization. If they're responsibly being agile, then they've actually had enough documentation that they knew what success criteria looked like, they measured against it, and they have data to report on what was successful and what wasn't. And that allows them to then focus on the next steps of their minimal viable, right? That allows them to see what worked, what didn't, and where they need to pivot. Because you don't pivot on the foot that's working, right? You don't pivot the foot that's working. You stand your ground there. You've proven it by data. Then you pivot the other foot, right? You try new waters. You try new ideas. You try new interfaces. So that's what I would suggest around the collaborative teams is leverage technology, but make sure that there's reporting and metrics behind the collaboration. If it's just discussion, probably the only place that really doesn't make sense is in true brainstorming, true ideation, true creative thought and design theory. But outside of that, there needs to be data brought to the conversation before the conversation is had.
Thank you, Matt, for that. Rick, I see all of your comments, and I'm going to take that into my internal group, and we'll consolidate that and then answer it on the Q&A that we post after the webinar. But if you could just chat to me, if we need to reach out to you, the best phone number to reach you, that would be great, if we have any questions on that. Okay, and David has a question for you. What approach do you recommend for enhancing the approval process around changes, especially in many highly regulated environments?
Sorry, Karen, say that question one more time about highly regulated environments.
It said, what approach do you recommend for enhancing the approval process around changes, especially in many highly regulated environments?
Yeah, great question. Great question. And this is where technology can add a lot of value in understanding the risk posture and true risk of a change. So many of you, I'm sure, have heard of Gartner's bimodal IT strategy. Some have talked about it in a different context about multi-pace or multimodal. What it really is, again, it's decision support. So if we look at decision support, how are we making a decision of what this risk level is? So one of the things that I recommend for a lot of organizations is rethink your technology in the way that it could make decisions for you. Where is the knowledge? So for instance, if you have certain regulatory compliance objectives that you have in place, create one of each of those control objectives as a configuration item and drag and drop your systems or certain CIs that you would have as part of your change request in a relationship to that control objective. Now your tool has the contextual awareness to know, well, wait a second, if you're trying to make a change to this particular server or this application, or even if it's a desktop, that's supported by laboratory notes, which is a system that's regulated by the FDA for CFR 21 Part 11, right, for e-signatory and two-phase authentication. Whatever your regulation is. We can't make that change in this particular speed of process, in our standard change, process or whatever variant of a change process you have. It has to go through this one here, which requires these checks and balances. And now the trigger, the actual assignment of work, is leveraging this knowledge to do that, right? That's increasing the speed. It's reducing the parties that need to be involved. And it's also enhanced the level of audit that's involved in the actions that take hence thereafterwards. So later on, your data calls and satisfying your internal and external audits are all going to be push button, right? So it's a great way to let technology offload some of the heavy lifting for you, and it's frankly not all that hard, right? It's just rethinking what a configuration management system is. Oh wow, I never thought about a control objective being a CI, but it's a great way to build that context, and then using rules inside of your system to make those changes on your processes. And most ITSM suites these days do that. They can easily allow that.
Thank you, Matt. Rick is asking, will the Q&A be included in the recording? So if you go onto our website, www.itsmacademy.com, and you click on the banner that says webinars, you'll see under there's all the archives for all of the monthly webinars that we do, and there will be the recording, there will be the slide deck, and then there will be a link to the Q&A report as well. So it'll all be right there together for you. Okay, and Rick says thanks. And Michael has a question. He's saying, I perform change management for the network services division of a global financial. My challenge is teaching the technicians and engineers on how to assess the real impacts of change to facilitate better coordination when their take is that impact equal outage when I am trying to obtain impact analysis to mitigate against outages for the impact of a planned outage. Any suggestions? And would you like me to reread that?
No, it's a great question. And it really is. I feel your frustration here. It is one of the biggest challenges we have. I think especially this day and age within ITSM professionals is like, we get it, right? A change is not just there to prevent an outage or an impact, right? It's about being responsible, and it's about being truly end customer focused. And so we get that, but unfortunately, we deal with those who are so focused on the functionality and the technical dexterity that they need to have to perform their job function that they can't see the bigger picture. So one of the things that we have to do is we truly have to reestablish the service model and relationship outside of it. So I wrote a blog on this probably a year ago where I called it defining your IT services is like bringing a knife to a gunfight, right? And part of that blog was to highlight just this issue where when we're focused functionally on our internal IT services, we don't have the business context. And so every internal battle and every internal conversation that we have, someone will bring up their, I just need to get my job done as an argument. And when we don't have the business service context to that, we lose the ability to say to them, well, you don't have a job if the business fails, right? And not that we need to get that harsh, but and if you read the blog, I'm not that harsh, but it is reality that we need to bring that context back. And so, understanding, bringing back the concepts of, listen, you don't work in a silo. We work together. We're collaborative partners. So when you change something, like a network, it's not just about an outage. It's about the fact that I also want to know, was that network device changed? We at some point are going to have tools that are watching the drift on all of the configuration of our information. And if one piece of our environment changes, and it wasn't by you, Joe, or Steve, or Sue, or Sally, then we got a hacker in our environment. And if you think for 1 second that we can just go heads down and do our work and do the things we need to and not worry about the business being at risk, well, then we're not on the same page. Now, I know you care about this business, and I know you care about security, I know you care about integrity, and I certainly know that you care about high availability. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. But you also have to realize that we don't work in silos anymore, and that our business revolves around technology and information, and that financial services is a service we provide as a technology company, and network infrastructure services is a critical and vital component to that, and is most vulnerable to the risks of our business. So changing and logging our changes is something we have to do. It's not an option, so that we can be collaborative. We can strategize about our network perimeter and our threats, our scalability and our growth, and our business opportunities as a technology company providing financial services. So that would be how I would approach that conversation, and just reminding them that it is about the business, and try to map your business services back to those network services as quickly as you can. I know it's one of the hardest parts to do, but having a visible and transparent service model of business functions such as quoting and rating and account lookup and things that are truly servicing your customers, your brokers, whatever financial kind of service model you're in, that will help a lot, right? Because that gets you out working for the same team. It's kind of like you do with your teenagers, right? You say, listen, we're on the same team here. Here's the outcome we both say we want to get to. I just feel your approach is wrong, right? Here's how we have to readjust our communications about our approach.
Really some heavy thinking there.
It's a challenge.
Yeah, right? Right.
Having run a network engineering team, they can be great, phenomenal, technical people, but boy, they can be tough to work with.
Yes, Michael said thank you, and he put a big challenge exclamation point.
Yeah, it is.
It is. All right, that's all the questions that I have right now. So if there are any last questions, please get them in now. And Eric, if you could please put into the chat the promo code for the free workshop, that would be great for us. And I just want to remind everybody once more that our next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, March 23rd. And it's Jane Grohl, and Jane's going to be coming in and talking to us about the continuous people pipeline. So we're really looking forward to that as well. And as you log out, if you can all just take a moment to complete the post-web survey. It's just a couple of questions, and a lot of it, one of the questions is just, what would you like to see in a future webinar, and we do use that as we go looking for people to present on those topics and subject matter experts for you. So we would really appreciate your feedback on that as well. And Matt, I can't thank you enough for coming and bringing this question to us. It was very provocative, I think, and really a lot of discussion hear from everybody on it. I mean, this is certainly a lot of questions. I know Nina's probably huffing and puffing back there because she's been scribing all of this, and so thank you, Nina, for doing that.
Well, thank you, Karen, and thanks again to ITSM Academy for allowing me to come on and be a little bit provocative, to where we are in the industry. And obviously, I think there's great value in the work that you're doing and what Axelos is doing. And so, all of this is done with the best intentions, just to, again, raise the bar as professionals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, really a lot of food for thought here, a lot of things to say, yeah, you're right, we don't need that anymore, but let's morph it this way. So lots of good information for us, so I appreciate it. And I hope that you come back again and present with us again.
Anytime.
All right.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Mine as well. Everybody have a great day.